Hello, welcome to day 2 of EmpowerHR. I'm Jenna Miller, our Chief of Staff at BetterWorks. Before we begin this amazing session, I just want to quickly recap yesterday. For those who may have missed, we kicked things off with our CEO, Doug Dennerlein. He interviewed Indra Nooyi, former chairman and CEO of PepsiCo and chief architect of Performance with Purpose, PepsiCo's pledge to do what's right for the business by being responsive to the needs of the world around us. She also shared incredible insights about her career, what we can do to elevate women in the workplace, and how business leaders can tackle the ongoing pandemic. We also heard from Josh Burson. He gave us a deep dive into what he's noticing in the HR landscape for 2022. So definitely watch his video for key trends and some of his predictions. BetterWorks Chief Product Officer Arnaud Grunwald shared his product roadmap with us, and we are so excited for his North Star project. Check out his video for more details on that and other important BetterWorks product updates. And of course, we were thrilled to have Joan Goodwin from Deloitte Consulting and Michaela Shovarova, Worldwide Director of Global HR from Colgate-Palmolive. They joined us for a fascinating conversation about high-performing cultures and the implications for a hybrid future. So stay tuned for ways that you can check out the replays of each of those sessions. With that, welcome to this session, Measure What Really Matters, a look into the DEI journey. Today, I am honored to welcome both Rocki Howard and Lenietta Hunter to our virtual stage here. Rocki is Chief People and Equity Officer, at the Mom Project and host of the Voices of Diversity podcast. Rocki is a tenured talent acquisition strategist with lean project management and HR certifications. Rocki's been featured in talent outlets such as HR Executive and ERE. And in this past year, she's been featured on multiple podcasts and a featured presenter over 40 times on the topic of diversity, including events such as SourceCon, HR Tech, TA Week, and the 2021 CNE's virtual conference. Also, we have Lenietta Hunter. She's a career HR professional with over 20 years experience in people operations within various industries. And in the last 10 years of her career, she has been in high tech with the last 7 at Conviva, the world's most trusted streaming partner. So welcome today, ladies. Hello. We had intended to kick off this session with an audience poll, but we ran into some issues with that. So instead, we really just wanted to get a sense of where all of our audience is at in terms of their company's DEI function or team is in their journey. So, we know some orgs may not have a DEI program or team currently. Some are just getting started on their journey. Some have a dedicated group, but maybe they're struggling and maybe lacking executive buy-in. And some may have well-established DEI programs, and which is fantastic, right? So wherever your organization is on that continuum, this session is for you. You're going to get something out of it, so don't worry. So with that, I just want to dive into our first question. Rocki, Lenietta, this is for both of you. Why do we feel like we have to keep proving that DEI is important in the corporate world?
Nita, why don't you lead?
So I've been thinking about this question, and it's something that I cannot actually go through life as an HR professional or people and culture specialist and not think about. Because every organization we go in, it's the same thing. I've spent an entire tenure at organizations that never even thought about DE&I, that never thought about the diversity of candidates that were coming in, especially when you come into high tech. It looks like it looks. All of the tech industry looks the same. And, it's just that thing. I think we keep having this conversation, one, because of fear. I think fear is the biggest. And I've experienced that even here at Conviva under a different leadership. It's fear of the unknown. It looks a lot like our country. And that fear comes from lack of emotional intelligence, lack of understanding. And I think it stems from building organizations that are just a bunch of 9-to-5ers, and we're not getting to know each other. We're not building personable relationships. We're coming to produce a product, And if we do that, we do well in the org. If we don't do that, we go home. If we question that, we go home. Right. And so I think fear has a lot to do with it. And just to keep that really short, I think fear, and then for organizations who are smaller, like Conviva was when I started, finances. It takes money to build a real DE&I program that can be nurtured, that goes on, and that the culture surrounds and becomes a part of. So, fear, finances, and lack of personable relationships. And corporate America, specifically, I can talk about high tech, but I think that's general.
Yeah, I certainly agree with everything you said. It's really interesting because I'm an Ingenuity fan. If you haven't read her book, I just finished reading the book, like My Life in Full, right? And there's a tie-in here. So when you think about when Indra entered the workforce, she was the only one, right? She was a pioneer as a woman of color, and both of them were equally as novel in those times, right? And you would like to think that we've come so far along that pathway, right? But I have a few stats that I can share with you to show that we're not, right? It's very interesting. If you think about top executive ranks, 85% of executives are still white. Only 7.5% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women. There are actually more CEOs by the name of John or David than there are female CEOs. Let's just sit with that for a minute, right? We won't even get into the other stats about people of color, right? And so I think the challenge here comes down to power and privilege, and not being willing, because we're willing to do the performative pieces. We're willing to kind of say to the world, here's what we're doing. We've given out this donation. We've done this, we've done that. But we're not willing to have the difficult conversations that say, racism and bias still exist in our communities, in our companies. We're not willing to put diversity at the same level as other business initiatives and hold people accountable. We're not willing to do those things. We're not willing to challenge power and privilege, because we're still having conversations about, well, when I put in equity initiatives, well, now that's reverse discrimination. Like, oh my gosh, if we go from having 85% of executives being white to, I don't know, 60%, like, does that really, it really challenges power and privilege. And so this whole concept of why we're stuck having to prove DEI's worth should be a really simple answer in society. We do this because it's the right thing to do. And we want this America that we have, especially if we're talking to a US audience that claims to be a melting pot. We want our work communities to reflect our real communities, but that challenges our status quo. It challenges our power. It challenges our privilege. And guess what? We're just not quite willing to get that uncomfortable yet.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Speaking of challenges, Lenietta, you've been doing this work at Conviva for some time here. I'm curious, what's the origin story of how DE&I sort of evolved at your organization? Can you share that with us?
I can. And I've been at Conviva for 7 years. My boss and I, who's a good friend of mine, we essentially started people, place, and culture from scratch. First 2 HR employees at the organization. And when there were 70 employees, and there's now 315. And so while both her and I are women, we're both women of color, we always had in our minds that we want to build an organization that looks like the community that we're working in, right? That we're living in. So it's always been in our mind, but with that comes challenges. So what was the crises that happened that now we can have this bigger conversation, that now it can be public, right? I think the first one was an idea. It was a place where I had just become fed up with status quo. Anyone that knows me know I don't do status quo. I don't do it well. And so looking at our organization, maybe a year and a half ago, I realized that we're 70% engineers, and we had not one Black engineer, not one Hispanic engineer. And so that was kind of the first crisis that happened. And so we began an affinity group called Intentionally Fostering Belonging, where we pulled those of the varying communities that were underrepresented or not represented at all within the company and start having conversations about what we need. Unfortunately, at that time, we did not have a leadership team that supported doing anything on a company-wide realm, and just not having those conversations. Exactly what Rocki said is not being ready to have those. But in talking to the then CEO at that time, I could hear fear, I could see fear, and it's not being ready, not wanting what we were seeing on TV happening outside to happen inside, not impeding productivity, right? Because of that lack of understanding, my productivity is already impeded because I am the only me that I see. And if I want to grow in an organization, I don't see anyone where I'm going. And then the second crisis that happened, because we could not then begin setting goals for the organization because we didn't have buy-in from leadership, the board, things like that. Our CEO changed, and that was about 6 months ago. And so for those of you online who do not have a DEI program, have not started the conversation, or having a hard time having the conversation, this is my journey, and it takes patience to get where you're going. I'm a fighter. And so when we got there, there was a couple women in the company that were questioning how women are promoted in the organization. Our current C-suite, there is only one woman, and that's my boss, and she just got the C-suite title 30 days ago. But she's done this for 7 years, sitting at the table with them in the board meetings with men. And our mix is Asian. We're 70% Asian. And then our current, I heard Rocki talking about what statistics in the real world looks like. Well, Conviva looks the same. And so in leadership, so the women in C-suite is just one. And then there is, from when I say leaders, we talk about VPs and above. Out of our 315 global population, there's 4 VPs and above that are women. And so that was the crisis that started it. There's a ERG group called She, Her, Them that formed out of those 2 ladies saying, why is it so difficult for us to be promoted? And then we start the DEI conversation about what do our job descriptions look like? Are our promotion processes documented? Does that workflow make sense for everyone? Do we really need a PhD to do this? You know, and what are some of our partnerships that are helping us look at places we can recruit from? But that all started, the crisis that started that was one, women stepping up saying, hey, I think I'm qualified to get here. I need more clarity about how I actually get there. And so that started the conversation, and our CEO jumped in. We did not expect that, but I was in a room talking to him yesterday about what was going to happen today. And I talked about how shocked we were because this has been a passion for him. He spent 13 years in the company working in sales, and he's just now becoming the CEO. And he sent out an email to the entire company saying, these are our goals, to be 50-50 women to men by 2023, and to increase those that are not represented and underrepresented within the company. And that was the crisis. And that was the, ready, shoot, aim. But my manager and I were working on aligning what that aim looks like. And it's a journey. So for those of you online, don't be afraid of the journey. It's a journey, and it's going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of what you were talking about stemmed from just asking really good questions and being curious. I'm curious, Rocki, why is it important to start out with asking that foundational question? We kind of talked about this when we were thinking about what we wanted to, how we wanted to tell a story today. Why is it important to start out with that foundational question? What does diversity mean to us? So like us, our company.
Yeah, I think it's so important because there are multiple dimensions of diversity. right? And so it's really interesting. Like you'll see when I introduce myself and when I talk about how I identify, I always say that, you know, I identify as she, her, Black, Christian, Gen X wife, mom, right? Because those are multiple dimensions of my diversity and how I show up, right? When we think about diversity, most of us think about diversity in very narrow boxes. And that's a good place to start to build a foundation on. We can't get to intersectionality. We can't get to the complexity of multi-dimensions of diversity until we have the foundation set. And that's how we have to grow our programs. And so the challenge that I see in a lot of organizations is that we look at some of the marketing that is out there from other corporations and go, we want to be like so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so. First of all, let me just tell you, I just finished a year worth of work with another organization where we did some pretty in-depth analysis. And part of that analysis that showed us that 70% of over 400 companies globally, and companies that you would all know, are at a level 1 or 2 in their journey. So to Nita's point earlier, like if you're just getting started, it's okay. Some companies are better about marketing what that looks like. And it's a version of Instagram life, right? Like all of these like images that you see that go, oh, I woke up like this. And I'm always like, I didn't wake up like that. And you know how much work it takes me to look like that? I didn't work like that. But now all of a sudden I feel like I'm supposed to wake up and look like that. Instead of going, here's what this means to us. Like what's our, Simon Sinek, start with your why. Why are you doing this? What are you trying to accomplish? What does this mean to you? How is it connected to your overall business? Because this shouldn't be a service project. This needs to be integrated into your business. And unless you can answer those questions for people about why this is important to us and what is the what to us, like the example that Nita just gave with her CEO coming out and being really clear, I'm looking to have 50% women, right? That is clear. And so now we can follow that guiding star and say, this is where we are in our journey. And so now I can plan for all of the actions that come behind that and support it. I can be strategic in my recruiting programs. I can be strategic in my talent management programs. I can be very thoughtful in how I develop talent. I can be very clear in terms of what success looks like. And then I'm measuring success by the benchmarks for what we've set for our organization. I'm not trying to keep up with the virtual Joneses or live that Instagram life or live that performative life. I'm very clear about this is what diversity means in our organization. This is what success looks like. This is what I need to invest in to get it. This is how we measure success because we have a very clear foundation built. And you can't measure the objectives. You can't have the OKRs that follow that. You can't be clear to people as to whether you're making progress or not unless you know what that path is. So that's why I think it's so very important. And I think if you start trying to align yourself to what another company does, you may be starting at the wrong place in your journey. So I think you have to start with a strong foundation of what diversity means for your organization, which dimensions of diversity you're going to start to focus on as a foundation, and be very clear on what success looks like or what failure looks like so that we can continue to evolve.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was reminded of something that we chatted about earlier. And this is sort of for Lenietta, because I think I remember you mentioning this, but that foundational why of like, why are we starting? Where are we now? And where do we want to go? It doesn't always necessarily happen at the very beginning of your DEI journey.
Oh.
So one of the things we talked about is that, it's okay to pause and restart. Lenietta, curious, can you just speak to that a little bit? Because I thought it was so powerful what you said.
One of the things that I absolutely love about Conviva, and one of the reasons why Conviva has been that best place to work for everyone, is that we do what's called objectives and key results. And the philosophy behind that is that you measure what matters, right? Yes, I have a day to day, right? Yes, every day when we talk about DEI, I am reviewing job descriptions, making sure that job descriptions are, built for the team. I'm in a business partnering role right now. So I'm working with the managers while our TA team is recruiting. And our managers now, one of the processes that we have is that our managers do phone screens before they go into, this whole panel process. So you're not putting people through this, 6, 7 month interviewing process with no intention of hiring them, which, you get in a lot of candidates and you can waste a lot of time and not get the right candidate, right, for that. But when you set specific goals, I think that it's important to step back and begin to identify your partnerships. Who are you partnering with within the organization? Looking at using, I love BetterWorks. So for all of you online, I'm biased against BetterWorks. Because in the system, when you look at measuring what matters when it comes to DEI, you can set your organizational goals. And even if you don't have that buy-in up top, but you're working in a HR capacity, a TA capacity, then we set goals. What does that goal look like? The first goal is not going to be to recruit 50% women. The first goal is to identify where we are. What are the analytics? So we're bringing in the operations, our business intelligence group, and saying, what do we look like now? Right? And right now, we're 75% men, 25% women. Where are they located? What are recruiting practices in California versus New York versus Texas, right? And for me versus Beijing and India, right? And looking at those kind of things and saying, what are my specific goals? Be intentional about the goals you set and be intentional about who gets to see them. A lot of times we'll have these internal goals. Don't ask me how I know. We'll have these internal goals to do some things, but you have allies. You have people who can help. And so to look at things holistically, set your goals clearly, use your objectives, right? That's where you want to go. It's still a SMART goal, but then use your key results. What's the first step? The more you manage your journey and be specific about it, be intentional about it, I think the clearer it gets for the entire organization where you're going. And then, I mean, having leadership support, it's a plus for me, but it hasn't always been. And so making sure that I know where I am, I know where the team needs to go, and then helping the team understand, but also stopping to listen. When you do objectives and key results, we do it quarterly, right? So if my goal this quarter is to audit all of our job descriptions and to measure the analytics for people where people are leadership roles, independent contributors, then those are the goals that I'm setting for now. But I also know that I need to help them understand. And I also know that there could be blockers. So we stop each quarter. What are our blockers? The first question in we have 3. How are you doing with your OKRs? What are your blockers and how can I help? Mm-hmm. And trust me, if you meet my manager, when you say, this is my blocker, she's going to go knock it down or do her best. And so it's good to know where you're going. Do your research. Read as much as you can, participate in as many conferences as you can, because your journey is going to be very different. And you may be able to take a little bit from Nita, a little bit from Rocki, a little bit from Jenna to build a program that will work for the organization that you're in.
Rocki, anything to add there?
Yeah, I do think it is a journey, and you need to make sure that you're working along the journey. And it's interesting because I have 2 thoughts here, right, that I'll try to push out. Is that Nita spoke earlier about the difference in a CEO and they matter, right? And that really struck me. I'm so proud. Allison Robinson, the CEO of the Mom Project, is right now, her and her husband are founders. Our active CEO and COO just both went out on maternity leave. right? If you're seeing this, Allison, congratulations. We're so glad Caroline is here. Baby Caroline is here. But the reason I bring that up is because leadership has to lead by example. It's very difficult for an active CEO who's running the business and your COO to lead the business. But it's more important that they model the behavior of what we're trying to accomplish in the world and what we're trying to accomplish internally. And so that CEO support is very important. However, where I think companies get stuck is it is oftentimes you have this vision at the top and you have employees at the bottom that may be pushing up grassroots efforts, but we get lost because we don't have this that embeds throughout the organization. And we don't tell everyone what their responsibility is in helping us grow and evolve our DEI initiatives. And so when you talk past diversity, when you talk past representation, when you talk past, I can recruit these people and bring them in, the challenge is then, do we have a culture set up that's really about inclusion and belonging? That's where it belongs to each and every one of us. So as a chief people officer, as a chief equity officer, diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging don't belong to me. They belong to all of us. My responsibility is to help all of us understand what this means to our organization and what everyone's role is. And we miss that. We absolutely miss that. And to a question that I see in the chat, we often don't think about how this affects all of our other programs. So when you talk about DEI being factored into succession planning, this is a hot button for me. We oftentimes are so busy trying to figure out how we recruit diverse external talent. When they show up, we don't go, we want to keep you, right. It's like, all right, we got you here. And we don't think about, we don't have a plan for how do we keep you here, right? And so it's these two very difficult points. Matheson did a survey, my friends over at Matheson did a survey, and you've got to think about candidate experience. And it's so interesting that 62% of, they surveyed, I think, like 500 diverse candidates about their experience. 50% of candidates felt like being diverse, having a dimension of diversity, be public about them, is a barrier in our processes. And like 62% of people experience bias in our processes, right? So that's the journey to get in the door. And then once they get in the door, we go, okay, cool, join an ERG. We're going to go recruit more people from the external. So if you're truly embedding this through the process, it is about teaching your leaders, from the team leader, from even the receptionist at the front desk, how this is how we live this value of DEIB. And then it has to be embedded in every one of our programs. When you do succession planning, how is it that you're going to make sure? So if you're trying to get from 25 to 50% women representation and you want to see it at the highest ranks, where are the people here that we can develop and grow, and how are we going to invest in them to get them there? Where are our high potential people internally? When you do talent review, there should be an overlay to that. Here's our high potentials, here's where they rank. Well, now let's look at that through a perspective of a diversity and equity lens. Does this reflect the world we want? How do we continue to build that pipeline of talent? We talk about talent pipeline, usually referring to the external, but we don't talk enough about it in terms of internal as well. So there's just a few thoughts to kind of, kind of buy in or join up what Nita was saying.
Yeah.
And Jenna, can I just add a real quick, a real live example of measuring what matters? When Rocki just talked about, when you talk about succession planning, when you're bringing these people in, knowing where they're going, in BetterWorks, we have a conversation set up called Individual Development Plan. So when we bring people in within the first 90 days, their manager has been trained on what the individual development plan looks like. We ask them about where they've been, their experience that they're bringing to the company, and we wait till the 91st day to do this so that they're embedded in the company, they've seen things, and then we talk about where they're going. And that allows managers to see, okay, they want to be CMO. I interviewed someone yesterday and she said, at the end of the day, in the next 5 years, I want to be CMO. And I saw her being there. And so when on her 91st day, after seeing everything, if that is still her 5-year goal, we set goals for the first year. And then we add within the conversation in BetterWorks, you can add an objective. We make sure that every employee in the company has a career plan objective every single quarter, whether that's learning, whether it's partnering with someone in the organization. And when we measure it, we measure real life analytics of our 35 new hires that started in this quarter. What percentage of those have completed their individual development plan? Then you're measuring the success of what you're doing, and you can hold managers accountable, or you can hold the business partner accountable for not checking, as we go to see who has those plans. So that's just an example of creating metrics and measuring what actually matters when it comes to DE&I and getting people to where they need to be, and also being able to incorporate that early on in the succession plan. I don't perceive that our CMO would leave, but I do know who I have on a path to go in that role should he leave. And it happens to be a woman who will be qualified by then to do that.
Yeah, we do something similar, Lenietta, where, our CEO encourages everyone to have a, like a professional goal, right? Alongside their work goals and everything like that. And I think it really helps us to sort of keep that, maybe it's on the back burner, right? But it's always in our minds, and you keep it sort of there. So you're not ever ignoring it, right? I just wanted to touch on one thing that Rocki said. What struck me was you were pointing out the gap that exists sort of between that grassroots bottoms up effort and, you may have C-suite buy-in, but what I feel like might be the missing piece in the middle is some expertise in companies, because I know at BetterWorks we have like ready, willing, and able individuals that are passionate about DEIB. And then we have C-suite executives that are like, yes, go, here's some money, like, please. But I think what we're missing is just, that level of expertise that can help propel us to the next level. So I'm curious, and this question is for both of you, when do you know it's time to bring in outside help?
It goes back to, and I think you're spot on. I think when we think about programs, we do this programmatic educational piece, right? Let's go through bias training, let's do this, and it's good. But what we miss too is kind of that coaching, development, follow-up plan for people who may not be as familiar, to make sure they keep on the journey. So we do the programmatic piece, but we don't kind of put together a path or a journey to be able to do that, right? And I think that's the tough piece. I think when you think about bringing in external help, you have to do that foundational work piece, right? To know, here's what we're trying to accomplish. To Nita's point earlier, here's where we are today. You've got to do the work to say, here's where we are today. You have to do the work to say, here's where we want to be tomorrow. And you need to be very clear about, here is the investment I want to make, and here's the outcome that I want for this investment of external help and support, right? I've certainly been in situations where I've been in companies that have paid thousands of dollars to have external consultants come in and, kind of do assessments and do roadmaps, et cetera, or do focus groups, et cetera, and then give us their playbook for us. And it's such a, it was such a great information in it, great things to be able to do, but it wasn't connected to the resources that our organizational actually had. So ultimately, we paid all this money for a playbook that sat on the shelf because it wasn't realistic, given who we were as an organization, to be able to execute the instructions that we were given. So I think it's very important when you're bringing in external help to be clear, to do the work first, to understand, here's where we are, here's where we're trying to get to. And some organizations can't necessarily do the work that says, here's where we are today. At least be clear about, this is my due north, this is where I'm trying to get to, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. An external person, I want you to objectively assess where I am today, and then help me understand how I can get where I want to go. But you need to be very clear about what that external person that you're engaging actually is going to deliver on behalf of your organization. And there's lots of things that you can use, and there's great experts out there. I certainly engage with them. There's lots of places where you can use those experts, but you need to be very clear about the ROI that you're getting back for that investment.
Really great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add just a few things, right? From being from a small company, one of the things that would tell me I need to ask for help is being short-staffed, right? This is a big deal. It's a big job. And if you don't have the bandwidth to do the research that you need to do, to look at the data analytics within the people company, to ask questions and understand where you are, and then move from that to interviewing people around the company. You know, you could have employees all over the place, but you want to make sure that you know who's employed and have just real-time conversations. I suggest that not be in the office or on Zoom, but in a safe space where you can have those conversations. If you don't have that time, if you're that short-staffed, that's when you need to ask for help. That's one. The other one is you may not have the experience. I mean, I've been in HR for 20 plus years, and every organization that I've been in is very different. High tech is a beast all by itself. And so while I think that, yeah, you know, I have all of these accreditations and I've been here for a long time, there's still spaces where I'm like, I haven't really seen this work. Right. And I see a question in the chat about trends, right? I'd be curious to why you want to follow trends. The why will help answer that question. But for us with Conviva, we're the trendsetters. Conviva is the company that's going to look at this and say, I'm tired of being what everybody else is, and I'm going to ask for help because I don't want to look the same as Google and Facebook and Adobe and all of these other, I don't want to look like that. Here's who we are as individual as we are. I want us to be human. I want us to show that there's equity within the company. I want us to show that we're intentionally fostering belonging. And we have a culture group within Conviva called Conviva Champions. I need to see that there's representation from everyone so that the activities we're having, so that the way our offices are decorated, the way that our construction is made, that it fits everybody in every walk of life, that we're celebrating everybody. And I think that when you step back and take a look at yourself, if you are too emotional, there was a space last year during the protests around George Floyd and the countless others that were murdered by police officers, where I snapped because we had an email draft that came to me from, you know, a leader that everyone's influenced by that said the George Floyd trial. And I'm like, he's not on trial. And so there I could feel that I was a little bit emotional to then react to starting a program, to managing a program, to looking and seeing what we really need because I couldn't see past my own trauma. I knew then that I needed to call for someone from the outside to come in. And when you do that, make sure you're interviewing these people. Like Rocki said, you don't just want a playbook. We're working with a group called Agility. Jill Tavasari, who is absolutely amazing, and her team members who are getting to know us. That's their thing. They're getting to know us. They're immersing themselves in our culture before they talk to anyone, before they look at any stats. They're getting to know us because we don't just want a playbook, we want a partner. And so that's, for me, some of the things you should look at when you should bring in help.
I just want to read this question out that you had alluded to. It's, what do you do to stay ahead of trends, and do you attend professional development programs outside of your company? I'm not sure, Rocki, if you want to weigh in on that. And then I have a wrap-up question that I want to ask.
Yeah, I'm probably really biased and really lucky. So when you think about the work that the Mom Project does, part of the work that we do includes Work Lab. Pam Cohen is our head of research, and her team are absolutely incredible, right? And so for me, it is about understanding what's going on in the market. How can we use our mission-based company And how can we use the data? How can we use the trends of the experiences of mom, how positive and negative, to help influence companies to really hire more moms, right? At various intersection points. It's about understanding how you can bring to life through data and through what's going on and those shifts and those changes, and how we can architect that experience and help companies be able to create programs and create ways within their own organization to bring mom in. And so, I am really lucky in that I have that level of expertise within my own organization. I'll also say that I am a Strength Finders lifetime learner. So I'm the kid that always had her nose in the book. I continue to always have my nose in a book. I am fed by what's going on. I do take certifications. I do learn. I do the work. Everything from reading articles to reading books to participating in professional development, because I do think, and especially if you're an ally, no matter the dimension of diversity, one of the things that happens a lot, especially when you have big traumatic things, is people kind of go, what can I do? And what you will hear people say is, can you do the work? Please don't come to me and ask me all the questions. Like, I am not the representation for every Black woman that you see. Do your work, do the reading, do the research, understand what's going on, understand the trends, and then come engage me in a conversation from a place of, Rocki, I've done this. Can you give me your point of view? I want to learn more. This is how I understand this information, but do the work ahead of time. And that's why I think that's so important.
Thank you both. So just recognizing, even though we weren't able to do our poll, we probably have, a range in terms of where folks might be on their DEI programs journey. I just want to wrap up by asking if I know this whole session was full of advice from both of you, but is there one piece of advice that you give folks that are doing this work just to maintain that momentum and engagement during these times where it can be really difficult to stay motivated?
Yeah. Nita, do you want to lead?
Oh, sure. I would say, first of all, I saw this word bold in Rocki's LinkedIn profile, and I love that word, because if you're not confident, if you're not bold about what it is that we need to do, how we need to do it, it's going to be terribly difficult for you and any other consultant that you bring in. And that makes it difficult for the people that this is supporting, the people that this is helping, right? So be bold about it. Not only be bold, but be intentional. When you're doing this work, the data, the first thing I'll say about the data, be intentional, understand it. I am a reader. I read everything, right? And I read for understanding. I read for knowledge. And so look at that. I look at data, for example, within Conviva, right? It says, if you look at the data and you look at the percentage, it says 44% of leadership are women. 44% is for women, because you're looking at a sample population of data. So when you look at that, it might say, oh, I look like, and this is what my issue was with the trends. I look like the trends, or I look better than the trends. But when you look at the numbers behind the percentage, just be intentional about understanding the data, because that will help you understand where you're gonna go. And then when you talk about building momentum, leverage your allies. Build relationships with your leadership team. And I don't mean that every time that relationship means going to them asking for something. I mean, understanding who they are, why they do this job, right? I asked my CEO yesterday, he has a pair of Jordans for every single day. And I hope he doesn't mind me telling the story, but he has that because when he was younger, he was disadvantaged and he got teased about his shoes. And so now he doesn't wear the same pair of shoes twice in a month. And so I would not have known that if I didn't sit down and have this purposeful conversation with him. I mean, Keith, you all, the CEO of Conviva is fabulous. I mean, he is that guy. And so when you can follow leadership and you have faith in them and they have faith in you, it makes all the difference. So my words for just keeping the momentum is be intentional. Use your performance management system. If that's not BetterWorks, make company goals, small team goals, even, because even the smaller ones, when you put your heart in it, everybody sees what you're doing.
Rocki, we just have a few seconds left, but please.
Yeah. I think I will say this, right? I'm proud to be a chief people and equity officer because it tells you where my priorities are and my organization's priorities are in terms of people and equity. Don't assume though that everyone feels that way, right? And I think it's about engagement and understanding the agenda and making sure. So my plea is, if you are on here and you head up people in any way, if you're CHRO, if you're CPO, if you have any variation of that title, please don't forget that while you were trying to work so hard to get that strategic seat at the table, please don't forget your heart for people, and that the center of what we do is people in equity.
Thank you so much, Rocki and Lenietta. This has been an amazing conversation. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next session.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.